Hello,
Right.
everyone. This is the official episode 1 of The Influence Gap. And who better to join us for our premiere than Bill Hopkins, the author on the 20th year anniversary of Influencing the Influencers. So I'm really happy to have you here today, of course, with my wonderful co host, Nathan. Bill, for those who don't know you, would you like to introduce yourself?
Happy to. Thank you very much, Crystal. It's a pleasure to be here finally, now that we got a few things out of the way. I could be on this podcast, and it's a pleasure to be here. My name's Bill. I'm the founder and CEO of KCG, and we've been doing industry analyst relations advisory for 28 and a half years. And we've kind of been there since the beginning in AR as a discipline. And as Crystal said, 20 years ago, we wrote a book about all this stuff. And with influencing the influencers, and we're starting to do early work on a second edition. We don't know yet if it's going to be a second edition or a new book, because it could easily be a totally new book. Because in the 20-year-old book, there is no social media, there's no LinkedIn, there's no
Wow, what a
anything.
world.
Right? It was pre all of that stuff, so it doesn't. There's no AI. There's not a chapter on AI. There's not any of this
Can
stuff.
we go back? Is it too late?
Hey,
Exactly. It was a
wait,
little bit.
and professional and personal back then was actually separate, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
Because
there's
there was a Facebook
Yep.
and you did not add your coworkers to your Facebook
No,
back
you
then.
didn't. You kept them away from your Facebook if possible. So
so Bill, I'm excited for this conversation because obviously AR chat was all about the world of analyst relations. And we're going to keep talking about that because it's where we've been and kind of where we live. But like we talked about on LinkedIn, the influence economy is growing. And I think there's no better person to have this conversation about a little bit of the past, the present, and the future than you kind of taking that vantage point.
yeah, it kind of actually, because we go so long and deep in our analysis of the analyst firms, because that's the primary universe we all deal with, and one in particular that takes up 65 to 80% of our time, according to our research. People think that we like somehow don't get influencers, or we're all about Gartner, or those kind of things. It's like, if 20 years ago I would have written the book, called it, How to Understand Gartner, if that's what I thought this was all about. It's not. And it's always been about influencers. Now, we can all agree to have very different definitions of influencer and still get along, right? We don't all have to subscribe to that same definition. I have a much different definition than a lot of people do on influencer, but I purposefully wrote the book 20 years ago to be about influencers, because that's what we were dealing with. Analysts were one of many. Now, that's gotten a lot more so in some ways over the last 20 years, and it's gotten a lot less so in some ways over the last 20 years. There's certainly a lot more quote unquote influencers to have to take a look at. And that's part of what makes this job so fun. By the way, for anybody listening to this, if you do AR, or you're around AR, or you have anything at all to do with the analyst, I've been doing this for 35 years, between being an end user, being an analyst at Gartner, launching KCG, being a vendor on the other side, and been doing this for 35 years, actually close to 40 years if we're honest, 39 years. And there is no more exciting time to be in this business than right now, because of
Yeah, I
all
agree.
the things that it's not. Everybody says, oh, yeah, because of AI. It's like, oh, AI is only one little tiny piece of it. There's just so many things in this market that are going on right now that are kind of converging to make this one of the most exciting marketplaces, I think, out there. I mean, I've even had people come from the outside and say, there's some really cool stuff going on with the analyst. I'm like, yeah, there sure is. It's actually a really interesting place to be right now. So
Well, Bill, let's go back to something you just said, and let's start there. You said you have a very different definition of influencer. So I'd love to hear, what is your definition of influencer? Are analysts included in that? Are analysts separate? If so, what's your definition of analyst?
yep.
And let's go from there.
So they say never start a definition by saying it's a range, but I'm going to do that. Influence is a loaded word. That's actually like chapter 1, line 1 in my book. Right? Is the influence is depends on who you ask, and it's kind of like the word software. Right? What is software? Nobody knows anymore. Right? Do
Yeah.
your best mate Bugatti, and nobody knows. Right? And it's influence is to me, if I am kind of hardcore draconian about who is really influencing my clients, it's somebody who is having direct person to person contact either through a medium or face to face. Sometimes these do happen to face to face, but more often it's through some electronic medium, but it's a person to person conversation that helps to kind of close the loop on I'm giving you advice, I'm giving you opinion, and it's contextual to solve your business problem. To me, that's influence. I don't see a lot of the people these days that are called influencers really influencing a whole lot, right? That's one of the interesting quandaries in this entire market space. And it's like the smart players here are not playing the influence game; they're playing the advice game because that's what's gonna live through AI is human to human interaction, advice, opinion. What do I do? Kind of stuff, contextually solving business problems. That's not putting an AI interface on your research if you're a research house.
Crystal, I want you to jump in here, but maybe to
Ooh,
be really
shots fired.
reductive, Bill, when we think of influencer in the modern context, we're thinking one to many, top of funnel. I'm paid by a company to talk about a product. But you're saying when you think of who an influencer truly is, it's more deep funnel, more akin to an advisor, somebody that you actually go to for advice. And so it's a,
You just hit right on it, Nathan, but you didn't actually say it.
okay.
The
Well,
influencers are paid by the vendors. My influencers are paid by the buyers. They're paid by people who are buying things to help them make better buying decisions. They're not paid for people that sell things to help them sell things. That makes sense?
and And you guys were really hitting on the core of what I think inspired Nathan and I to even start this show is top of funnel is something that's really easy to identify, but what people don't talk about is I'm not really making my decisions always about top of funnels motions. Do you know what I mean? Certainly I'm taking a look at them and all of that, but I really want to know like if I'm making any type of buying decision, Nathan, have you interacted with this person? Or what do you think about this thing? Because I respect you. Same with you, Bill. Like, I recently got a new role. And what is the first thing I do? I went to the analyst community and said, hey, what do you know about this firm? And what do you think about these things? I had a core set of questions that were really important to me in terms of what I wanted to do, what I'm interested in, and honestly, what kind of humans I want to spend the next, 40 to 60 hours a week with across a number of years. And so that's really the influence gap.
Well, and the top of funnel is important. Like, let's
Yep.
not, this is not a
It's all
show
Totally.
to say,
Yeah.
important. The entire funnel is important. That's why I tell everybody it's a
exactly.
funnel. It's all important, right?
Well, I go back to the Forrester B2B summit that I was at recently. I'm going to get a ton of runway out of this, apparently. They talk about preference marketing and how it is an overwhelming majority of the modern buyers have the person they want to buy already in mind, whether that's because of top of the funnel activity or because of a conversation they've had with a colleague or on a practitioner forum. And so brand has once again become really important. Like, I think brand versus demand has always been the conversation, right? And I think probably because of some of the trends you mentioned, Bill, not just AI, but the democratization of information through things like Substack and LinkedIn, like brand building has become so important again.
Yep. It absolutely has. And part of you mentioned something too, Nathan, that was, you keep saying these things that are just dead on. You just say them in a different way. The top of the funnel stuff, it's my opinion, doing this for a long time, that there's not a whole lot of discernment around throwing money at the top of the funnel on what you said. I agree that you should be doing what you're talking about at the top of the funnel, just as at the bottom of the funnel, and being very, very discretionary about where and how you spend money. As a matter of fact, right after I finish this at noon today, I'm doing a webinar that recaps KCG Connects. We had 120 people in person, 30 people online this year in Austin for Connects. And I'm recapping everything that went on. And one of the big recaps on the whole thing is understanding that this funnel exists and that part of our issue that we have in AR, because that's usually who this is a whole nother discussion of, okay, the handling of all these people that we're talking about, who does that fall on in an organization? Well, it's analyst relations. That's the job function that does that. And that's why that gets pulled into this. But it's a perception problem that I'm going to go and start spending a lot more money with top of the funnel guys, because that's all my marketing and ELT guys seem to be concerned with. And my answer to that is, you have an education problem. They're
Mhm.
not dumb. These are smart people. They get it and they understand it, but they don't have anything else to go on. They see LinkedIn, they see things that are being pushed out that way. They get bombarded and people ask questions. What about this? What about this? And it pushes them farther to the top of the funnel. They're not asking themselves the question of, well, when somebody buys our stuff, who are they talking to? They're not talking to those guys at the top of the funnel. Nobody is talking to those guys they talk to each other and to us. It's really this kind of virtuous circle thing. We've always called it the vendor mindshare ecosystem. There are these two parallel ecosystems:
Mhm.
the advice for buyer advisory ecosystem, and the vendor mindshare ecosystem. And these guys they're like the OG top of the heap, play the top of the funnel on the vendor mindshare ecosystem thing, talking to other vendors and to each other and
Yeah.
indirect. And the other side is, I hate to mention, everybody hates it when you mention the big G, Gartner out there doing 350,000 end user inquiries a year, helping people figure out what to do, who to do it with, and how much to pay for it. And that somebody in a vendor organization at an executive leadership level would not understand that and get that, I believe is a failure of somebody in the organization, AR in this case, because that's the responsibility it falls on, for us to educate them as to how these things work. Now,
Yeah, I
never
just
going to
wanna point
educate
out,
everybody, but yeah,
I think Gartner is actually a really good example of just the effective go-to-market funnel in general. They do a
yeah,
great job building their brand, and
yep,
they do a great job converting people. I mean, they are.
Also, can I just say,
Go ahead.
Nathan, I want to say
Yeah.
this, like, because Bill, you said something that surprised me, which was like, I hate to bring up the big G. They're a really important part of influence economy. There's no denying that. That doesn't mean they're the only game. I
No.
think there's lots of ways to be influential that are just as relevant. It's just they've got a big part of the market share, and that's great.
but you use them for different parts of the funnel. That's my whole
Of
point.
course. Yeah,
Gartner
yeah,
actually,
totally.
the stronger your brand, the less you have. Here's a bombastic statement for you. The stronger your brand in this space, the less you have to play the top of the funnel. Period.
Of course, yeah.
Right? So
Yeah,
Gartner doesn't have to play the top of the funnel. They don't
Well,
have to
and
do the pay for play. I'll get you. I'll tweet about you and all that kind of stuff. Right?
I think an interesting case is real quick, Crystal,
Yeah.
Infotech Research Group. They're
Yep.
a firm that actually has a large number of end user clients, especially in like the mid market and below, more of like practitioners. And they don't have the brand recognition. And so they are having to go out and say, look, we actually have this massive pool of influence that vendor community we can help you access. I just think it's fascinating. I love both firms. I've been working with them a lot more closely this year. I just think,
Yeah. They're our dark horse candidate for quietly coming onto the scene and kind of appearing as a buyer advisor, which has never happened before in this
yeah,
space. Nobody's ever appeared as a buyer advisor, because right now Gartner's the only true pure play buyer advisor. And ITRG is interesting. I'm going to be out there in Vegas in a couple weeks talking to a bunch of people, and got it. They've set me up with a bunch of one-on-ones with clients and stuff like that, so I can talk to the end users that are using them, because I really want to get a better idea and feel for
yes.
who they are. But what they're doing, sorry, Crystal, what they're doing, just to wrap back to the previous point, Nathan, they are they are trying to figure out how to do more top of the funnel stuff.
Mhm.
And what I've been trying to hammer on them for the last couple of years is, don't worry too much about the top of the funnel. Worry about how you translate what you're doing in the bottom of the funnel so people understand what you're doing at the top, rather than, don't get into the pay for play,
Yeah.
kind of, I'll go make you famous crowd. That's what I call it. For anybody that remembers Young Guns, Emilio Estevez, right? Just before he shot somebody, he'd always say, make you famous, right? And this is, to me, that's the influencer crowd. It's like they're all coming to you, make you famous, pay me some money, I'll make you famous, right? And that's just, they don't need to do that. They've got a good, solid base at the bottom. The hard part is the bottom of the funnel. That's what nobody has cracked in 40 years, but Gartner really is the bottom of the funnel.
Yeah.
And all indications are is they've cracked it in certain markets. Now, they're not a head-to-head competitor with Gartner at all, but in some markets they are. Crystal, you've been dying to get a word in edgewise.
No, I'm gonna take you on a little boondoggle. I noticed you've been traveling a lot lately, and your whole company has taken a little bit of a shift, and I just want to give you a moment to talk a little bit about that. Like
Yeah,
you
thank you.
are you're also an influencer in this space. Like if anyone wants to know, get a rundown, right, of the different firms and all of that. Let's talk about that a little bit. And your position has kind of changed a little bit over the years too, just in knowing you for 15 years.
Yeah, yeah, very much so. Thanks, Crystal. We didn't rehearse this. She just asked me this question. I decided about 2.5 years ago that I wanted to reinvent my 27-year-old company. And I was like going around, and after we started into it, I was saying, yeah, we're the coolest 27-year-old startup with a 65-year-old CEO in the world, right? And it's like I saw the opportunity that is represented, and for the record, I believe this is what all analyst firms also need to figure out that they're not figuring out, that all these firms have communities that they have built over 45, 50 years in Gartner's case, IDC over 61 years, right?
Yeah.
I am barely older than IDC. I was born,
Hmm.
but I was 3 years old when IDC was founded.
First analyst
And
firm.
they've been around forever, and they've got a community. They have a brand, and that brand has built this community. And Forrester has a brand, and the brand has built this community, and blah blah. Nobody in any of the analyst firms has figured out how to do the community thing right. And of course, when you do something, you think you figure out how to do it right. And I think the AR Tribe, what we did at KCG with 2 years ago, launching the AR Tribe, which is now over 800 people, every one of them fully vetted. There's not a single analyst firm, sales rep, or analyst, or influencer, or anything in the group. They can't be there. And it's over 800 people now. And bringing them together to help each other solve problems also gives us a conduit to help them solve the problems. And by that, we prove our value and worth. And it feeds ultimately what KCG does as a company. But we decided to reinvent Crystal around three things 2.5 years ago. And that was around community, content, and context. I believe that is what drives what I do. I believe that's what drives what Gene Hall does, what George Colony does, I never can remember his name, Lorenzo Larini does. That's what these guys all do, right? Is they are in one way, shape, or form riding over a community, or communities in some cases, of like-minded people doing similar things. They went off down there, oh, well, that's a role, and I can sell a role more stuff. And that's like, nope, that's not the way I look at it. I don't think that's a role. I think that is affinity. It's people that do the same thing around the same set of business problems and things. And they always treat it as a role and tried to figure out how to sell it more stuff. And my advice to them is treat it as a community and let them figure it out. They'll tell you where they want to go. They'll tell you what they need. They'll tell you what they want to.
Well,
So
I
it's like an
actually that
inspiration point.
Yeah, totally. It was a sea change in how we looked at KCG and what we did for our clients. Hired a lot of new people. We're still hiring, looking for great people all the time to do different things. I'm gonna have to sooner or later find some people that can do what I do, or I'm gonna end up doing this for the rest of my
you're
life.
gonna
And
retire, Bill?
no, I'm not announcing Bill's retirement.
Don't spread
Rumors.
rumors.
Bill's not retiring anytime soon. I can promise you that. Now, someday, do I want to retire? Yes. I'm just not there yet. I haven't figured out how. So we're going to keep on going.
So I wanted
Love that.
to
I think there's something to learn there because it comes back to the show, right? Which is, Bill, you're doubling down on the relationships, and that is really like the superpower, right? And as we swirl a little AI up in the conversation, that's why our human connection has become even more so a conversation. In fact, one of the analysts that I'm working with now in my new role well, actually, all of them talk about the importance of that human connection. And in fact, they don't even talk about things as like human in the loop. They talk about human at the helm,
Yeah,
Yeah.
right?
absolutely.
Which is, and your investment in community actually does. I mean, it's not AI, but it puts you at the helm of being able to see like what's moving you right now and how do I fill this need? Not always for monetization, but to create more of that trust equity across your community.
I mean, humans
Absolutely.
crave community. I think that is an empirical truth. There are obviously people that are introverted and
Yep.
extroverted introverts, but I think
They're the lurkers. We see them all the time. They lurk around, they never post, they never
yeah.
say anything, but they're on there all the time.
Yes, we naturally gravitate towards community, whether that's online community in the form of a Reddit or, a Blue Sky or an artist formerly known as Twitter, whether
Yeah,
that is a professional organization. I want to,
Or a
I want to,
podcast that you spin up to have more to build more community and build community
didn't
for other people too.
didn't plan that one either, but that's an excellent promotion. But
that's a good.
I wanted to pull on that because I think, Bill, when you were talking about how KCG is reinventing itself, it really just reminded me of the fact that I think buyer intelligence is becoming so important. And it's not just buyer intelligence at a market level, it's a company working with their buyers, with their partners to understand where are the pools of influence that they go to for answers. We've heard that some of our end users use Discord. There are professional communities on Discord. There are professional communities on Reddit. Where are your prospective buyers going? How can you use that information to help with the top of the funnel, the mid funnel, the bottom of the funnel? Like, I think in the age of AI, regardless of the AI portion of it, the intelligence is the key. Like,
Yeah,
you have to be
yeah.
smarter. And I think that is the
It's
big sea change. We have
it's
to get smarter.
intelligence applied through a human interaction, and Crystal hit on this earlier. You cannot overstate the value of that human interaction piece in delivering this, and it's because humans crave other humans' opinions. Smart humans do. Dumb humans think they're the smartest guy in the room. We don't need them, right? We get rid of them. We kick them off our club. But smart humans understand that the value is in the other human beings that you associate with and what they know. And that's what from day one, that was our like guiding purpose behind the tribe, was to build a place where all these really smart humans we'd been working with for years. There are people on the tribe that I have worked with, Nathan, for 30 years. More than that, there are people on the tribe that briefed me when I was an analyst at Gartner in the early 90s, right? And
I
there's
know. I had a conversation with Dawn recently, and first of all, name drop, but I didn't even. I was like, "You were doing AR back then,
yeah,
right?
they
Like
didn't call it
you
AR.
were right." And like she told me that you were the first analyst ever she briefed, and
And
I
she
was
was
like,
doing PR at the time.
and also I was like, "Girl, I just did the math." Because you were an analyst a long time ago, right? And I was like, this math is scrambling my brains. Anyways, sorry,
No,
little
no,
little
no.
boondoggle there, but it's just like kind of amazing.
Yeah.
It's just kind of
So
amazing how much time has gone by.
I wanted to hit on one thing you brought up, Crystal, and I don't want to spiral off into the general AI conversation, but I just want to tell you about one thing. We've been heavy users of AIs for 3+ years at KCG. I've actually a million and a half years ago when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I actually did a thesis project on AI in the early 80s. And my like last sentence was, yeah, 40 years from now, this may actually come to fruition. Well, guess what? It's been 40 years and it's coming to fruition. And so I've been pretty enamored of what it can do and how it does it and all that. So we're all, I've
Kind
said
of
this.
want to see receipts.
Excuse me?
Yeah.
Do you have a hard? I kind of want receipts. Do you have a hard copy of that somewhere in
Do you
your
have
attic?
evidence?
I do have it somewhere. I think it's in a storage bin that I pay for every month, write a check. That's the best business model on the planet. And, I probably do
Are
still
you
have
still
it
writing
somewhere.
checks?
Yeah, no, I signed auto draft, believe me,
Okay, I was
because I
gonna
don't
say.
wanna know. I don't wanna know. And, but anyway, I we've been experimenting, using it, doing it. We use a industrial strength business version of ChatGTP where we have the data moats around our sovereign data. That was my thing from day one. We can't use this until it has sovereign data moats, and that's guaranteed. And I don't want our LLM to ever be to see the rest of the world. So we spent 3 years training. It's a Crystal Nathan bill is what we've been training, right? And it's by that I just mean it's somebody who just knows like what all of us know because everything goes into
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
right? And we
Yeah.
continue feeding stuff into this, and we've taken that, and on the back end, we're very cheap. We're a small company, but we actually paid money to have this app written, and it's with our content engine that we use for our KCG Essentials clients for the 28 years of IP that KCG has been accumulating. It's all in databases and all out in a nice application where you can search through it and use it. They have AI, and it's ChatGTP on the back end, and the tribe has AI built into it. And the tribe's AI is everything that the tribe members talk about on a day-to-day basis. There's been thousands, probably approaching tens of
Mhm.
thousands of conversations in the last 2 years on the tribe. And it takes all that information. For instance, I always use this as a proof point. I'll go in and I'll just say, tell me what you know about QKS. QKS is one of the highest incidents of inquiry that we have is on QKS.
Mhm.
And it's because they have a
Oh, they're
aggressive
all over the place too.
that bombards people, and people are going, should I do business with QKS? And so we have a profile on QKS, and we've got these 5 to 8 page profiles on every analyst firm on the planet. Some of them are more than that. The Gartner Forrester IDC ones are bigger than that. And we've got all these profiles. We've got what we know about it. But long story short, we had these guys build a MCP off of the tribe, an MCP off of our content database. And we're in the process, we haven't done it yet, but we're in the process of then hooking that up to our, what I call Chat KCG, which is our Chat GTP thing that
Mhm.
we've trained up for 3 years. And we rolled this out. It's out for our essentials customers. They can go on to our KCG content library, and it says Ask Gen AR. That's our trade name for our AR is Gen AR,
I like that.
and for our AI. And it says Ask Gen AR, and you can ask it a question. It will hit our printed content. It will hit the community. You seeing something here? It's giving you context by
Yeah.
combining the community and the content together and delivering you the
Yeah.
content.
I
And
mean,
it's
there's
I
before
I think this is a really interesting case study of how do you take a niche market, right? Take your IP over spanning decades, commingling that with real humans, up to date, what's going on in their mind right now, to create a really impactful data segment that could be actionable and ready at at any point. So it's actually a really inspiring story, Bill, of how do you take a knowledge company and turn it into something super relevant and build in an engine for continuity.
that's kind of by doing it by necessity, you're absolutely right. That's what I've happened onto. It's kind of dawned on me that that's kind of what has happened. That's why I
It
say
wasn't in that thesis.
no, that part was not in that thesis, believe me. My thesis was more about this really doesn't do much, and it really is kind of infantile at this point, but it's kind of interesting. Let's
But in
wait
40
40
years, it
years.
could be really
Yeah,
great. Yeah.
yeah.
And here we
And
are.
is it
And it was
possible
funny
Sam
because
Altman
I actually made that remark. Julie and I will be married 40 years on July 5th. And I made
congrats.
that remark to Julie when we first started dating. She was asking me about what are you doing? What are you working on? I said, I've been working on this project, and it's about this stuff called artificial intelligence. She said, what's that? And I said, I'm not really sure myself, but it looks kind of cool. And she said, is it real? And I said, maybe in 40 years. Yeah. And guess what?
You're
We're there.
like, it's artificial, so not exactly real.
Exactly. Well,
Like,
but
Is
it's
I
in the
know those
name.
words, but together, who knows, right?
Cognitive dissonance. Yeah.
is it
And,
possible that
but it
Altman
excuse me?
and Dario, is it possible that Sam Altman and Dario read your thesis and you're actually owed a little bit of their IPO money whenever that happens for their companies?
That would be great. Who
Heard
knows?
it
But
here
I doubt it.
first.
I doubt it. I doubt it. I did it for a course I was taking at Harvard at the time. So maybe it got published. It was a Harvard summer school course, not a real Harvard course, but
Okay.
maybe it's in a Harvard archive somewhere. I don't know.
It's still
So I
fancy.
look, I do think this is all really relevant though, because regardless of whether you're looking at a source from Forrester or SEMrush or any of the other kind of experts focusing on search and AI optimization, the red thread between them is the fact that AI prioritizes authentic human voices. And I don't think that's going to change. And this just underlines everything that, we've been
You
talking about for the last 30 minutes.
bring up an interesting point, Nathan. This is one of those things that just causes me to scratch my head and say, what in the heck are people thinking? There's a so first of all, we all know we just have to agree and understand that there is an enormous amount of Schadenfreude about Gartner. That and Schadenfreude being that there are a lot of people in tech that like actively root for Gartner's destruction because they hate Gartner, because Gartner's mean to them. They cost a lot of money. They have horrible business practices. They're abusive in their relationship and sales. They don't listen to their customers. All of that is true, right? But it does not negate the fact that they have $4.8 billion worth of revenue coming from end users that are asking them, what do I do? Who do I do it with? How much do I pay for it? Right? Their influence is still very real, but it drives me to distraction when people say something to the effect of, yeah, Gartner's going to get creamed by AI because AI works outside the firewall and all of Gartner stuff is inside the firewall. Can I say bullshit on this podcast? Okay.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
we
Right.
don't have any
All right.
sponsors, but we
That's
could.
bullshit. My AI, I can go right now to my trained AI. You got to ask the right prompt in the right way, and it pulls back EMQs. It pulls back Gartner peer, voice of the customer peer review stuff from GPI. It pulls out every press release
Mhm.
any vendor has ever done that said, I'm a leader in a magic quadrant or I'm a challenger in a magic quadrant. It will also find magic quadrants and digitize the dots. It'll take the picture and digitize the dots off a magic quadrant. It knows a ton about what Gartner thinks
It
outside of the,
And
and it's
and let's
beginning
be
more so.
real. There's great people there, and they're figuring it out just like the rest of us. You know what
They're
I mean? Yeah, we don't know what their roadmap is. And maybe, part of their closing down was to give them a little breathing room to figure out what does the future look like and how do we prepare ourselves? Because guess what? That's what so many businesses have been doing over the last few years. Heck, that's what we're doing as individuals, right? We've had to slow down certain operational things. Like, could I work on this project or do I take the next 2 hours to watch this Claude webinar of how do I optimize something? And then I take the second hour to bang around, right? It's the same thing. It's just done at a $1 billion scale. And so here we are. I've got my popcorn. I'm not betting on Gartner losing. I want them to continue to charge ahead because that means the knowledge business is still viable and relevant. And I do truly believe that the pie gets bigger and it's not,
Well, and
one sum.
that's the key. It's the pie gets bigger and there are more places where you can look for information. I think diversity of thought is a very, very important concept in life and in business.
Yep. When I was at Gartner, I've actually heard that it's not as encouraged anymore, but diversity of thought was encouraged between the analysts. We had weekly or monthly research meetings when I got there. And this was all the analysts. There were only 100 and some of us at the time. And we get everybody together and yell and scream and argue with each other. And Dale Kutnick, who ended up going to Meta and then other places, he was kind of leading these things. And a guy named Mike Brody, who'd been there for years, led them before. Gideon Gartner would be involved with some of the ones before I got there. Gideon was not there when I got there. But in these meetings, you were encouraged to have diverse opinions. And you were literally, that's how iron sharpens iron, right? And that's how you came up. That's my point earlier about dumb people don't listen to other people's thoughts, right? They only listen to their own because smart people listen to what everybody else has to say and they hone and refine and continue to kind of forge that idea that they have, and that's very important. We foster that at KCG. We have a weekly research meeting that I'm going to continue to do as long as we can, and it's actually this afternoon. It's Friday afternoons, and we get together, and I will throw stuff out there and have people bang against it. And does this work? How are we going to talk about this? What are we going to do there? And makes me better every day. I learn
Yeah.
things from the rest of my company, and I've been doing this a lot longer than any of them, but they know stuff that I don't know. And if it comes up against anything having to do with social media, I just turn and ask Luke or Dustin because they know that. I
But Bill, this is exactly why you created the tribe, because you know that there's a lot more questions and thoughts and ideas that were happening that you weren't privy to. And your mind alone can't come up with or synthesize into buckets or whatnot. And therefore, now you've got tools to help monitor. And then you're like, okay, 20% of my engagement talking about this thing, let's have a webinar next week and do a town hall. I love that. I'm a huge fan of that.
absolutely. And Nathan, I think you brought it up in a prior conversation that you and I had was talking about this concept of the analyst of the analyst. And people have been telling me for 25 years, oh, you're the analyst of the analyst. And my answer is no. We don't need an analyst of the analyst. What you need is you need an advisor to the people that use analysts and help advise them to figure out how to get the most value out of the analyst. You don't need an analyst of the analyst. That's totally ostensibly what we do because we put that kind of rigor and an analysis, and we do primary and secondary research against all this stuff, and we're always polling and talking to clients, and we blend the anecdotal in with the other stuff. But that's kind of like this whole conversation. We thought of that 20 years ago as being an analyst. That's not. These people that we call analysts, really what they're in the business of doing is two things: helping technology buyers to do a better job of buying smart and not paying too much and doing business with the right people, and helping technology vendors to get their message out to the rest of the world in a coherent manner that helps to drive business. And that's how we see the entire marketplace. You either do that or you do that. You don't. Gartner does a little bit of both, but the moats between those two are kind of hard to swim through, right?
And they
And they
both have
sep
a time and a place.
Yep, they totally do, and it's just a totally different thing, so.
So I guess I'm going to transition us into our last question. We're figuring this out as we go. This is episode 1. You said it yourself. You've been around since the time of the dinosaurs. I did not say that. So you have seen this industry, how it's grown, how it's changed. So obviously, feel free to talk about that. But also, where do you think this larger influence economy conversation is going? Because we also just acknowledge there's a time and a place for both. There's a time and a place for the amplifiers, and there is a time and a place for the advisors.
Yep. So I'm gonna rewind. I'm gonna hit the rewind machine back to 1998. And the summer of '98, I just left Gartner, did a brief stint left Gartner in '97, brief stint as a vendor. That vendor got bought exactly as I thought it would, which was a good thing. And I hung up my shingle to do KCG in February of '98. In the summer of '98, I wrote an article for one of the best actual physical magazine journals that I've ever been associated with, called the Software Marketing Journal. Was run by a lovely lady by the name of Nadine Kowalik, who's unfortunately since passed away. And Nadine understood marketing and software, and everything back then was software. There wasn't as much there was telecoms, there was semiconductor, there was hardware and all that, but it was mostly software was the big thing back those days. And I wrote an article said priming the analyst with targeted messages. And it was written from the perspective of an ex-Gartner analyst, recently departed Gartner analyst, saying, "Hey, here's how you do it." And there's a cute little story about how you show up to give your pitch, to do your briefing for the analyst, and you got your demo and all this stuff ready to go. And I laid out in that article 5 kind of key concepts. And those 5 key concepts still ripple through everything we all do every day here in analyst relations. So I like to say to people a lot of times, it's like the more things change, the more they stay the same,
Yep.
right? And everything that's old is new again, right? And we keep coming up, and I kind of chuckle. It used to actually bother me a little bit, but I very quickly got over it and started chuckling about it when I see somebody on LinkedIn that comes across with some new AR thing that they think they thought of. And I'm like, dude, that was in the article in 1998, right? Or that was in the book in 2006 or whatever. And all these, and literally some of them are almost to the extent of you should prime the analyst by giving them targeted messages about your product. It's like, yeah, okay, that was our name of the article, right? And you kind of see all this stuff, and it puts a perspective on it. And the perspective is, I have long held that technology in general, all technologies, and I don't care which one you're talking about, it changes how you do things long before it changes what you do. We are just now seeing the cumulative effects of the changes of things like the internet with and coupled with large data models, data warehousing, which was popular 25 years ago, coupled with other things. We are now seeing these things really truly come to fruition because you have a tool that sits on top of it. AI is a tool, nothing more, nothing yet less. I don't want to offend it because I don't want it to come after. Well, maybe I do want it to come after me first. That way, I don't have to. I don't have to live
Don't
through.
worry, it will.
I don't have to live through Terminator. And I'm after the old and the weak, Nathan. I know that's the next thing you were going to say. So,
No, I was not gonna say that. It's
but
coming for me first
Oh my
too.
gosh.
that's coming for all of us. And I see
This
that, and I see the AI thing going on, and I'm looking at this and going, it is a continuation of what I've been doing at KCG for 28 years, what I've been doing for close to 40 years in my career and doing these things. And it all kind of circles back around at some point or another to this. Yeah, it changes the way we do things, but it doesn't fundamentally change what we do. Our job in AR is still to work with the most important influencers in the marketplace to achieve the outcomes that our organizations are expecting from those relationships. Fair enough? That's kind of a broad definition of AI, right? That hasn't changed. AI is not going to change that. Nothing's going to change it. Maybe I say it's not, but maybe someday after we're long gone, right, something changes. But it changes the way you do things. And the way this job has undergone radical change in the last, 30 years. But the most radical change, 80% of that radical change has been in the last 24 months. And it is
right.
fascinating to watch what's going on right now because come back to this ain't about influence. It's not, right? Because it depends on how you define that and what you want to. And sometimes, you know what? Stoking top of the funnel, if you're going to be real honest, that's not influence. That's just lead generation. It's just stoking, the top of the
Well,
funnel. It's not really
It
influence.
it
And
is it's influencing what gets surfaced up, which we absolutely know is how I think newer buyers, I think like your generation, Bill, are probably relying on actually still probably
is this
starting
the
to
hey boomer
convert
moment?
into
It's
so
okay, boomer Bill.
recently saw some yeah, it's okay, boomer. But I mean, even myself as an elder millennial, like I want to do primary research so that I'm coming in with some type of value, right? In terms of understanding landscape and all of that. So yeah, I do think it's important, but it's not the ultimate decision maker is I think what you're really saying or I guess
Absolutely.
I'm
And
trying to say. Yeah.
since we're trying to wrap up here and we can't just talk forever, let me leave you with a little bit of a controversial thought. Proprietary insight and information delivery are doomed. That I'm not saying they're gonna go out of business. I'm not saying, whatever. IDC, poster child of what I'm talking about, but I'm not saying IDC is going out of business. IDC is gonna change fundamentally and be an entirely different company than it is because that business is becoming democratized, to your point, Nathan, earlier. It's being commoditized, to your point, Crystal, earlier. This information doesn't have legs. And the reason is when you're the only one that has it, really, that's the way that was the IDC game for a long time. And then Omdia has its niche in there and the hardware and, and semiconductor into things and devices and stuff like that. And then there's, other companies come and go, Analysis Mason's other one, coming around that space. These guys are primarily insight and information brokers. That business model is doomed and they know it and they just won't say it. And they are coming up with different ways of delivering it. Now, Gartner's the opposite extreme and its business model. There's only a tiny piece of it. We know it on the vendor side as TSP, technology service providers, which is the vestiges of the old DataQuest business. DataQuest was a market research firm that competed with IDC that Gartner bought close to 30 years ago, right? And maybe over 30 years ago. And that part of it, there's a little bit of that still lives on in Gartner, but most of Gartner's business is in end user advisory, right? And end user advisory is a totally different, it is not driven by information and data. There actually is not an information and data element to it. That's one of the things I try to explain to people is my entire tenure as a Gartner analyst, I never once had an end user ask me what I thought the market share was of some market, or how,
Mm,
what was the growth curve on this, whatever. That stuff vendors want to know, right? And that
mhm,
information and data, it is, there are ways you can still produce it and still get value out of it, but selling it in silos around industries and technologies and marketplaces for a big price tag is dead. And that's what IDC knows. That's what all these guys. I had a long conversation yesterday with Bill Morelli at Omdia. Kind of, it's that time of year where we catch up on some of this stuff and what they're doing, and it's very obvious these guys all have seen the writing on the wall on that part of the business and are trying to do things to get out of that. That will eventually creep through to other differentiated business models. And it's also interesting in that there there's the holy grail in that space is to try to match that information with buyer information and come up with intent, right? That's halfway down the funnel is intent, right? And that's the holy grail, is to get to intent. And that is, nobody's done it well yet. A lot of people have tried. That's the whole idea behind ITT, Informa Tech Target, buying Omdia. That's the whole idea behind where IDC is going with Quanta and with TechMatch and the different AI-based products they're coming out with. And these guys have to change their business models to survive. It will eventually hit other models, but not as hard as it hits these information brokers, because the pure asset creators and amplifiers, the guys that are really out there just pounding out reports, they're not in the data and information business.
mhm.
They're in the marketing, go to market asset creation business. Let's call it that.
Right.
And for vendors. And that's a different business. And so I think we'll see the biggest changes in this space over the next few years to those information brokers and to the TSP part of Gartner. That'll be affected too because of the same thing, but it's just a tiny little part of Gartner. And in those kind of business models, the book is not yet written on how this is going to affect the rest of the analyst firms. And anybody that thinks they have this figured out, my personal opinion is you're wrong. And because right now, what I'm saying is we can see one thing that's happening real time today, and that's that disintermediation of the information brokers. The other things that are going to happen in this market, we can't see yet. And if anybody's reading tea leaves and trying to tell you somebody's going to go out and disintermediate Gartner and, and blow up the Gartner model, and other people claiming these kind of things, I just read that stuff and I laugh. It's like, I get it. You're self-promoting your stuff on LinkedIn and you got to do that and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, it's real fundamental change happens slowly, happens incrementally. And then one way you wake up and you go, it happened, right? And you're there. And that's what's going to happen with us. And I'll leave you with one last parting thought. I say this all the time. I've been saying it for years, is in the book of how AI and all this other stuff is going to affect us in analyst relations. For a long time, I said it was chapter 1, page 1, first sentence. It was a dark and stormy night. We may have added to that. It was a dark and stormy night, and I heard footsteps in the hallway. So maybe we've added a second line, right, to that.
Now we have the
Now we hear the footsteps in the hallway, right? And
right.
that's what's going to be so exciting and so fun to be in this industry over the next couple of years. And I am so stoked to be part of this and to be at the kind of middle of all the stuff that's going on, because it's fun. It makes
It
life
is.
fun.
And Bill, I just have to thank you so much for sharing so much. We actually may have to break this into 2 episodes. I don't know, because this is the longest chat we've ever had,
It'll be fun.
but
We're going full
it's so
Rogan.
fun.
Let's go for 3 hours. We'll go full Rogan.
That
I
we shall
don't want
not
to
do. I've got
comment.
to do work.
I don't want to comment on his podcast. I will simply say I will take his financial
Yes,
success.
I'll take
So
his balance
please.
sheet.
But yeah, no, this has been great,
Yes.
Bill. Thank you so
Awesome,
much.
guys. It was my pleasure.
Just
I
a great
enjoyed it.
time.
Happy to be here.
Excellent. So yeah, we'll talk again soon. Thanks everyone for tuning in for our premiere episode of the Influence Gap, where we take a little step back into the to our worlds, but you can see that it's a little different format, and I hope you enjoy. See you all later. Bye.
Peace out.